At 75, I discovered my daughter was too embarrassed to celebrate my birthday. My name is Edward Barnes. I raised a brilliant neurosurgeon who saves children's lives every single day. Last Tuesday, that same surgeon told me planning a birthday party would damage her reputation. She called me an embarrassment to her career. What she didn't know was shocking. I'd been secretly funding her biggest professional honor for 4 years. $2 million of my own money donated anonymously to make her look like a humanitarian hero. She also didn't know that her cruelty would cost her $7.5 million. I didn't argue with my daughter. I didn't beg or plead. I just picked up my phone and made one call that changed everything. The story I'm about to tell you happened 3 days ago at Johns Hopkins Hospital, in front of 400 of Baltimore's most respected doctors. It's about what happens when a parent's unconditional love finally finds its conditions. If this story sounds familiar, if you've ever felt invisible despite your sacrifices, hit that subscribe button. I want to know I'm not alone in this. And stick around, because what happened next will make you question everything you think you know about family, gratitude, and the true cost of success. This is how a retired shopkeeper taught a neurosurgeon the most expensive lesson of her life. Let me paint you a picture of how my daughter sees me. Last month, Iris was giving a tour to visiting doctors at Johns Hopkins. I'd stopped by to drop off some paperwork, more on that later, when she spotted me in my 20-year-old Men's Warehouse suit, the one I bought for her medical school graduation. Her face went pale. "Oh, this is Edward," she told her colleagues. "Not my father, just Edward. He's visiting today." One of the doctors smiled politely. "Nice to meet you, Edward. Are you in medicine too?" Ayers jumped in before I could answer. "He's retired, from retail." "Retail? Like I sold shoes at the mall." I didn't correct her. I just smiled and shook the man's hand, but I saw something in Iris's eyes that cut deeper than any scalpel she'd ever held. Shame. She was ashamed of me. The numbers tell the story of why she might think that way. Iris lives in a 4,000 square foot house in Roland Park. Mortgage payment, $12,000 a month. She drives a 2023 BMW X7 that costs $95,000. She carries a Hermes bag worth more than most people make in 6 months. Me? I live in a one-bedroom apartment in Dundalk. Rent, $800. I drive a 2004 Honda Civic with 180,000 miles on it. My monthly bus pass costs $127 because sometimes the Civic doesn't start, and I need to get around. At Christmas dinner last year, Iris's husband mentioned they were planning a ski trip to Aspen. $15,000 for a week. Iris laughed and said, "We should invite Dad, but I don't think he's ever seen snow that wasn't on a sidewalk he had to shovel." Everyone laughed, including Iris. I didn't laugh. I just cut my turkey and remembered the Christmas when Iris was 12, and I worked 3 jobs to buy her that microscope she wanted, the one that made her fall in love with science. See, what Iris forgot, or chose to forget, is how she became Dr. Ayers Barnes Richardson in the first place. In 2019, when Ayers was finishing her residency, she needed money for her final year at Harvard Medical School. The tuition was $61,000. Room and board, another $18,000. Books and supplies, another $4,000. I didn't have that kind of money lying around. I was running Barnes Family Grocery, the same store my father opened in 1963. We sold milk, bread, lottery tickets, and hoped to a neighborhood that didn't have much of any of them. But Iris needed that money. So on September 15th, 2019, I put a for sale sign in the window of Barnes Family Grocery, the store that had fed 3 generations of families in East Baltimore, the store where Ayers used to do her homework at the checkout counter, the store that was supposed to be her inheritance someday. I sold it for $243,000. Every penny went to Harvard. Ayers never asked where the money came from. She just said, "Thanks, Dad. I'll pay you back when I'm making real money." That was 5 years ago. She's been making $800,000 a year as a neurosurgeon for the past 3 years. I've never seen a dime. But here's the thing. I never expected to. Because watching your child save lives, that's payment enough. At least I thought it was. Until last Tuesday, when Ayers made it clear that her success came with a price I never anticipated, losing my daughter's respect. You might be wondering why I'm telling you this story. or why it matters that a successful doctor doesn't want to throw her old man a birthday party. Let me tell you what was really at stake. It wasn't just about a party, it was about erasing me entirely. 3 weeks ago, Iris came to my apartment, not to visit, to deliver news. She was being featured in Baltimore Magazine as one of the city's top 40 under 40. A full-page spread about her groundbreaking work in pediatric brain surgery. They want to do a family background piece, she said, not making eye contact. I told them my parents were deceased. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Your mother is deceased. I'm sitting right here. Dad, you don't understand. These people, they matter. They have influence. If they knew I came from this... She gestured around my apartment like it was a crime scene. What's wrong with this? Nothing's wrong with it. It's just... it doesn't fit the narrative. The narrative. Like my life was a rough draft that needed editing. But Iris didn't know the full story. She didn't know about the manila folder I keep in my desk drawer. The one with copies of every sacrifice I made to build her career. The Harvard tuition receipts, $243,000 total. The undergraduate loans I co-signed, $89,000. The MCAT prep course I paid for, $3,500. The medical school application fees, $2,000. The interview travel expenses, $8,000. Every receipt dated, every check photocopied, every sacrifice documented. But there was something else in that folder, something Iris definitely didn't know about. Bank statements showing wire transfers to the Johns Hopkins Brain Cancer Research Foundation. $2 million in anonymous donations spread over 4 years. Donations made in memory of my wife, Helen, who died of glioblastoma in 2016. The same research foundation that had just awarded Iris the Medical Philanthropist of the Year award for her dedication to brain cancer research. The irony was perfect, and it was killing me. My daughter was being honored for research I was funding. Research I funded because of the disease that took her mother. Research I supported specifically because I knew Iris was passionate about pediatric brain tumors. I was the anonymous donor who made Iris look like a humanitarian, and she was so embarrassed by me that she told reporters I was dead. But here's what really scared me. If Iris could erase me from her success story, what would happen to Helen's memory? My wife died believing that our daughter would carry on our values. Helen's last words to me were, "Take care of Iris, but don't let her take you for granted." I'd kept the first part of that promise for 8 years. Iris was taken care of. She had everything she needed and most of what she wanted. But I'd failed at the second part. I'd let her take me for granted so completely that she'd forgotten I existed at all. The stakes weren't just my pride or my feelings. The stakes were my wife's legacy and the lessons I'd failed to teach my daughter about gratitude, respect, and family. That's what I was really fighting for when Iris told me not to expect a birthday party. I was fighting for the right to exist in my own daughter's life. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening at 6:30. I was heating up a can of soup, Campbell's chicken noodle, 99 cents, when my flip phone rang. "Hi, Dad. Iris, how was your day? Save any lives? Dad, I need to talk to you about something." I turned off the stove. Her voice had that clinical tone she used when delivering bad news to families. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. It's about your birthday next week." My 75th birthday, October 18th, the same date Helen and I got married 38 years ago. "I've been looking forward to it," I said. "Maybe we could go to that steakhouse you like, the one in Little Italy." "Dad, that's what I'm calling about. I can't do a party." "Okay, just dinner then. You and Richard and me." "No, Dad, I can't do anything." The soup was getting cold on the stove. I sat down at my kitchen table, the one I bought at Goodwill for $15. "I don't understand. I'm hosting a medical symposium that weekend. Very important people. Department heads from 3 different hospitals. These connections could make or break my career." "Iris, your birthday is important too." "It's not my birthday, Dad. It's yours." The way she said it, like my birthday was an inconvenience she'd forgotten to cancel. "Right, my birthday. Look, these people I'm networking with, they're very sophisticated. They have certain expectations about the kind of people they associate with." "What kind of people?" Silence. long enough that I thought we'd been disconnected. Aries? People who understand their world, Dad. People who can contribute to conversations about more than grocery stores and neighborhoods they've never heard of. I see. No, you don't see. My colleagues spend $15,000 a month on entertainment. Their wives shop at Nordstrom, not Walmart. Their children go to private schools that cost more than most people's cars. And you think I'd embarrass you? I think it's better if we keep our worlds separate. I looked around my apartment. 400 square feet. One window facing an alley. A refrigerator that hummed too loud, and a TV with rabbit ears because cable was $60 a month I didn't need to spend. How long have you felt this way? What do you mean? About being embarrassed by me? Dad, don't be dramatic. Answer the question. Another long pause. When Iris spoke again, her voice was harder. Since I realized that success means surrounding yourself with successful people. Since I learned that your background either helps you or hurts you, and there's no middle ground. And I hurt you. You don't help me. 4 words that hit like a physical blow. Iris, I sold everything I had to pay for your medical school. And I'm grateful for that. But gratitude doesn't change the fact that you live in Dundalk and shop at Walmart and drive a car older than some of my residents. So what are you saying? I'm saying don't expect a party, Dad. Don't expect dinner. Don't expect anything that puts me in a position where I have to choose between my family and my career. What if I told you that you don't know everything about my situation? What's that supposed to mean? I stood up and walked to my desk, opened the drawer, looked at the folder full of bank statements and donation receipts. Nothing. Forget I said anything. Dad, you're being weird. I'm being realistic about who my daughter really is. What's that supposed to mean? It means I understand completely, Iris. I understand that you're too important for a birthday party with your old man. I understand that I'm an embarrassment. I understand that you'd rather pretend I'm dead than admit I exist. Dad, and I understand that there are consequences for the choices we make. I hung up the phone. For a long time, I sat at my kitchen table staring at that manila folder. Then I picked up the phone again and dialed a number I'd memorized years ago. Dr. Mitchell? It's Edward Barnes. I think it's time we had that conversation. After I hung up with Dr. Mitchell, I sat in my kitchen for a long time. The soup had gone cold, but I wasn't hungry anymore. I opened the manila folder and spread the contents across my kitchen table like evidence in a court case. Bank statement from October 2020. Wire transfer to Johns Hopkins Brain Cancer Research Foundation. $300,000. Bank statement from March 2021. Another wire transfer. $400,000. Bank statement from June 2022. $500,000. Bank statement from December 2023. $800,000. Total, $2 million in anonymous donations. All made in memory of Helen Barnes. All supporting the research that would eventually make Ayers look like a humanitarian. But there was more in that folder, things Ayers had never seen. Things that would have changed how she spoke to me if she'd known they existed. A letter on Johns Hopkins letterhead, dated 6 months ago. Dear Mr. Barnes, your continued support of our pediatric brain cancer research program has been transformational. Without your generosity, Dr. Ayers Barnes Richardson's groundbreaking work with children would not be possible. We hope you'll consider attending our annual gala on October 18th, where Dr. Barnes Richardson will receive our Medical Philanthropist of the Year award. The same Dr. Barnes Richardson who just told me she was too busy to celebrate my birthday. The same birthday as their gala. The same gala where my daughter would be honored for work I was funding. I picked up my phone and called my attorney. Margaret, it's Eddie Barnes. I need to schedule an appointment. Eddie, how are you? Is everything all right? Margaret Chen had been handling my legal affairs for 15 years. She was one of the few people who knew the truth about my financial situation. I need to make some changes to my will. Changes? Eddie, you just updated everything 6 months ago. I know, but circumstances have changed. What kind of changes are we talking about? I looked at the bank statements spread across my table. Then I looked at a different document. The trust fund I'd established for Iris when she graduated medical school. $7.5 million, earning interest, waiting for her 40th birthday. 2 years early, if she needed it for something important. Or never, if I decided she didn't deserve it. I want to redirect Iris's inheritance. Silence on the other end of the line. Eddie, that's a big decision. Maybe we should talk about this when you're not emotional. I'm not emotional, Margaret. I'm clear-headed for the first time in years. What happened? I told her about the phone call, about Iris's refusal to celebrate my birthday, about being told I was an embarrassment to her career. She doesn't know about the donations, does she? Margaret asked. She has no idea. And she doesn't know about your actual net worth? I looked around my modest apartment. $800 a month in rent, but I owned the building. I also owned 3 other buildings in Baltimore, plus a portfolio of stocks that had grown steadily over 20 years. She thinks I'm living paycheck to paycheck on Social Security. Eddie, you're worth $8.5 million. But I live like I'm worth 800. Because that's who you are. You've never needed to prove anything to anyone. Except my daughter doesn't see it that way. She sees a failure, a man who never amounted to anything. So what do you want to do? I picked up the Johns Hopkins letter again. October 18th, my birthday. Iris's award ceremony. The perfect intersection of irony and opportunity. I want to attend that gala, Margaret. The Johns Hopkins gala? But you always donate anonymously. Not this time. Eddie, think about what you're saying. I have thought about it. For 8 years I've been thinking about it. Ever since Helen died, I've been funding medical research in her memory. I've been supporting Iris's career without her knowledge. I've been letting her take credit for my generosity. And now? Now it's time for some honesty. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then, when do you want to meet? Tomorrow. And Margaret, bring the paperwork to establish a new foundation. What kind of foundation? The Helen Barnes Memorial Scholarship Fund, for children whose parents make sacrifices they never get credit for. 3 days after Iris told me not to expect a birthday party, I had to go to Johns Hopkins to deliver some documents to Dr. Mitchell. Nothing unusual. I'd been corresponding with the development office for 4 years about my anonymous donations. I was walking through the main lobby when I heard a familiar voice behind me. The key to pediatric brain surgery is understanding that you're not just operating on a tumor. You're operating on a family's entire future. Iris was leading a group of visiting physicians on a tour of the neurosurgery wing. She looked elegant in her white coat, confident and professional. For a moment, I felt that old surge of pride watching my daughter in her element. Then she saw me. Her smile faltered, just for a second, but I caught it. I was wearing my good suit, the same one she'd been embarrassed by before. My shoes were polished, but they were 10 years old. My hair was combed, but it needed cutting. Dr. Barnes Richardson, one of the visiting doctors said, could you tell us about the foundation support for your research? Iris's eyes flicked to me, then back to the group. Absolutely. We've been incredibly fortunate to have anonymous donors who believe in our mission. I stayed where I was, about 20 feet away, pretending to read a brochure about cardiac services. The majority of our funding comes from a single benefactor, Iris continued, someone who understands the importance of pediatric brain cancer research. Another doctor asked, have you ever met this donor? No, Iris said. They prefer to remain anonymous, but their support has been transformational. $2 million over 4 years. I felt something twist in my chest. She was giving this presentation 10 feet from a wall, where her Medical Philanthropist of the Year award was displayed in a glass case, an award she'd received for dedication to research I was funding. That's when one of the visiting doctors noticed me. Excuse me, he said, walking over. Are you waiting for someone? You look a little lost. Iris's face went pale. I could see her calculating, ignore me or acknowledge me and risk the questions that would follow. Oh no, I said with a smile. I'm just waiting for an appointment with the development office. Development office? Are you a donor? Before I could answer, Iris appeared at my elbow. This is Edward Barnes, she said quickly. He has some business with the hospital. Not my father, not even a family friend, just Edward Barnes, with some business. Nice to meet you, Mr. Barnes, the doctor said. What brings you to Johns Hopkins? Iris shot me a look that could have stopped a heart. Just some paperwork, I said. Nothing important. But the doctor was persistent. Are you familiar with Dr. Barnes Richardson's work? She's doing incredible things in pediatric brain surgery. I looked at my daughter. Her jaw was tight, her hands clasped behind her back. She was praying I wouldn't say anything embarrassing. Yes, I said. I'm very familiar with her work. It's remarkable what she's accomplished, especially for someone so young. Her research has been funded by some very generous donors. Yes, I said again, very generous. Iris cleared her throat. We should continue the tour. Dr. Peterson is waiting in the surgical suite. But the visiting doctor wasn't finished. Mr. Barnes, you seem to know quite a bit about the program. Are you involved in medical research yourself? I could have said no. I could have deflected. I could have given Iris the out she was desperately hoping for. Instead, I said, I have a personal interest in brain cancer research. Oh? Are you a researcher? No, I lost my wife to glioblastoma in 2016. The group went quiet. Iris's face was now completely white. I'm so sorry, the doctor said. That must have been devastating. It was, but watching researchers like Dr. Barnes Richardson work to prevent other families from going through what we went through, that gives me hope. Iris was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. She'd never heard me talk about Helen's death with strangers. I'd always been private about our loss. That's a beautiful way to honor your wife's memory, another doctor said. I try, I said, in my own small way. That's when Iris made her mistake, the one that would cost her everything. Mr. Barnes, she said, her voice sharp with barely controlled panic, I'm sure these doctors don't need to hear about your personal situation. The visiting physicians looked confused. Why was Dr. Barnes Richardson being so dismissive of a widower who'd lost his wife to the same disease she researched? Ayers, I said quietly. She flinched at the sound of her name. You don't need to protect me from talking about Helen. I'm not protecting you, she said. I'm trying to maintain professional boundaries. Professional boundaries, like my grief was contaminating her workplace. One of the visiting doctors looked back and forth between us, clearly sensing the tension. Dr. Barnes Richardson, he said slowly, do you and Mr. Barnes know each other? Iris's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. We're acquainted, she finally said. Acquainted. 25 years of bedtime stories, school plays, graduation ceremonies, and sleepless nights when she was sick. 47 hours of labor when she was born. $243,000 in medical school tuition. Acquainted. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. At the woman I'd raised, educated, and supported. The woman who was so ashamed of me that she couldn't even admit I was her father. Yes, I said, we're acquainted. And as Iris hurried her group away, I realized that our relationship was about to become much more acquainted than she'd ever imagined. October 18th arrived with that crisp autumn air that makes Baltimore beautiful, my 75th birthday, the day Iris had declared herself too important to celebrate. I spent the morning at Margaret's office, signing paperwork. The Helen Barnes Memorial Scholarship Fund was now officially established. The beneficiary, children whose parents had made significant sacrifices for their education. Starting fund, $7.5 million. Iris's inheritance. Redirected. At 6 o'clock, I put on my best suit. Not the 20-year-old one, but a navy blue Armani I'd purchased that morning. $4,000. The first expensive thing I'd bought for myself in decades. I also wore something else. Helen's hospital bracelet. The one she'd worn during her final stay at Johns Hopkins. I'd kept it in my wallet for 8 years. Tonight it went around my wrist. The Johns Hopkins Faculty Club was decorated like something from a movie. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, centerpieces that probably cost more than my monthly rent. 400 of Baltimore's medical elite mingled over cocktails that cost $30 each. I found my table, table 1, right in front of the podium. The place cards read, Mr. Edward Barnes and Guest of Honor. Ayers was 3 tables away, radiant in a black evening gown that cost more than most people's cars. She was laughing with her colleagues, holding court like the medical royalty she'd become. She hadn't seen me yet. Dr. Harrison Mitchell, the development director, approached my table with a warm smile. Mr. Barnes, I'm so glad you decided to attend this year. It seemed like the right time to stop being anonymous. Are you sure about this? Once we make the announcement, there's no going back? I looked across the room at Iris. She was explaining something to a group of doctors, using her hands to illustrate surgical techniques. Brilliant, confident, completely unaware that her world was about to change. I'm sure. The dinner was excellent. Filet mignon, roasted vegetables, chocolate mousse for dessert. The kind of meal Iris probably ate every week, but I hadn't enjoyed in years. During the main course, I noticed Iris finally spot me. She was mid-sentence when her eyes swept the room and landed on my table. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, and then something approaching horror. She excused herself from her companions and walked over to my table, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "Happy birthday to me," I said, taking a sip of wine. "This is the Johns Hopkins annual gala. How did you even get in?" "I was invited." "Invited? By who?" Before I could answer, Dr. Mitchell returned to the podium for the evening's main event. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, tonight we have the honor of recognizing someone whose dedication to pediatric brain cancer research has been nothing short of extraordinary." Iris's face lit up. This was her moment, the recognition she'd been working toward her entire career. Dr. Iris Barnes Richardson has not only distinguished herself as a brilliant surgeon, but also as a humanitarian whose passion for helping children has attracted significant philanthropic support. The room erupted in applause. Iris stood and waved, gracious and humble. "However," Dr. Mitchell continued, "before we honor Dr. Barnes Richardson, I want to recognize someone else, someone whose generosity has made her research possible." Iris's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't part of the script she'd expected. "For 4 years, we've had an anonymous donor who has contributed over $2 million to our pediatric brain cancer research program. Tonight, that donor has agreed to step forward and be recognized." The room went quiet. Iris's eyes darted around, trying to figure out which wealthy philanthropist was about to steal her thunder. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in recognizing Mr. Edward Barnes." The silence that followed was deafening. 400 people turned to look at table 1, where I was slowly standing up. Iris's face went through every emotion in the human spectrum: confusion, disbelief, recognition, horror. I walked to the podium, my worn shoes echoing in the sudden quiet. Dr. Mitchell handed me the microphone. "Thank you," I said, looking out at an audience of Baltimore's medical elite. "My name is Edward Barnes, and 4 years ago, I lost my Helen to glioblastoma." I paused, letting that sink in. Helen died right here at Johns Hopkins, in room 412. I held her hand, while Dr. Patricia Coleman explained that there was nothing more they could do, that the tumor had won. The audience was completely still. These were people who dealt with death every day, but they understood the weight of what I was saying. Before Helen died, she made me promise 2 things. First, that I would take care of our daughter Iris. Second, that I would make sure her death meant something. I looked directly at Iris. She was frozen in her seat, her face white as her table linens. I kept both promises. I sold everything I owned to put Iris through medical school, and I donated every spare dollar I had to brain cancer research. I pulled out a folder of bank statements and held them up. $2 million over 4 years. Anonymous donations made in Helen's memory. Donations that funded the research that made Dr. Iris Barnes Richardson look like a humanitarian. The room was so quiet you could hear the ventilation system. "But here's what makes this interesting," I continued. "Dr. Barnes Richardson doesn't just benefit from my donations professionally. She's also my daughter." A murmur rippled through the crowd. People turned to look at Iris, who appeared to be trying to disappear into her chair. My daughter, who 3 days ago told me she was too important to celebrate my 75th birthday, who told me that my presence would be embarrassing to her career, who told her colleagues that I was dead rather than admit she came from a working-class family. The murmur grew louder. This was better than any medical drama these people had ever watched. So, tonight, on my birthday, I want to make an announcement. The $7.5 million I had planned to leave to Iris in my will is being redirected to establish the Helen Barnes Memorial Scholarship Fund. Iris shot to her feet. "Dad, stop!" But I wasn't finished. This fund will provide full scholarships to medical school for children whose parents have made significant sacrifices for their education. Children who understand that success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about remembering who helped you achieve it. The applause started slowly from a table in the back. Then it spread, growing louder and more sustained. These people might have been medical elite, but they understood the value of gratitude and respect. Iris was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Around her, colleagues were whispering, looking back and forth between us. Dr. Mitchell took the microphone back. "Mr. Barnes, on behalf of Johns Hopkins, thank you for your extraordinary generosity, both past and future." As I walked back to my table, I passed Iris's chair. She grabbed my arm. "We need to talk," she whispered urgently. "Yes," I said. "We do." Iris followed me to a quiet corner of the faculty club's lobby, her face a mixture of shock, anger, and something that might have been panic. "Dad, what the hell was that?" "That was honesty, Iris. You should try it sometime. You just humiliated me in front of 400 colleagues." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Even now, even after everything I'd just revealed, her first concern was her reputation. "I humiliated you? Iris, you told people I was dead." "That's different." "How is that different?" She looked around the lobby, making sure no one could overhear us. "Because this affects my career, my standing in the medical community. These people respect me. They respected you when they thought you were attracting major donors through your humanitarian work. How do you think they'll feel when they realize your biggest donor was the father you were ashamed to acknowledge?" Iris's face crumpled slightly. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who used to help me stock shelves at the grocery store. "Dad, I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go, Iris? At what point were you planning to acknowledge that I exist?" "It's complicated." "No, it's not. It's actually very simple. You decided I wasn't good enough for your new life. You decided that a father who sold everything he owned to pay for your education was an embarrassment." Margaret Chen appeared at my elbow, carrying a leather portfolio. "Mr. Barnes, I have those documents you requested." Iris looked back and forth between me and Margaret. "What documents?" Margaret opened the portfolio and handed me a folder. "The Helen Barnes Memorial Scholarship Fund paperwork. Everything's ready for your signature." I took the papers and looked at Iris. "These documents transfer your inheritance to a scholarship fund for children whose parents sacrificed for their education." "Dad, you can't be serious." "I'm very serious." Iris grabbed my arm. "Look, I know I handled things badly. I know I hurt your feelings, but you can't just throw away $7.5 million because you're angry at me." "I'm not throwing it away. I'm investing it in children who will appreciate what their parents do for them." "Dad, please. Can we just go somewhere private and talk about this?" I looked around the lobby. Several of Iris's colleagues were watching our conversation from a distance, clearly trying to eavesdrop on what was happening. "Iris, we are talking about it. Right here, right now." "Not here, not with people watching." "Why? Are you embarrassed to be seen with me again?" That hit home. Iris's eyes filled with tears. "That's not fair." "What's not fair is a daughter who benefits from her father's generosity while treating him like a shameful secret." Margaret cleared her throat. "Mr. Barnes, if you'd like to proceed, I need your signature on page 3. I took the pen Margaret offered and looked at Iris one more time. "Dad, wait. Just wait. Let me explain." "I'm listening." Iris took a deep breath. "When I started medical school, I was surrounded by people who came from money. Real money. Their parents were doctors, lawyers, CEOs. They summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. They spoke 3 languages and had been to Europe before they were 16. And I felt like a fraud. Like I didn't belong, so I reinvented myself. I created a background that would fit in. A background that didn't include me. A background that didn't include Dundalk or grocery stores or any of the things that made me feel small. I felt a flicker of sympathy for my daughter. I remembered being young and insecure, wanting to fit in. But then I remembered the phone call, the cruelty in her voice when she told me not to expect a birthday party. "Iris, I understand wanting to fit in. What I don't understand is completely erasing the people who made your success possible." "I never erased you, Dad. You told your colleagues I was dead. That was just... It was easier than explaining." Easier than explaining what? That your father loved you enough to give up everything for your dream? Ayers was crying now, makeup running down her cheeks. I was going to tell them eventually, when the time was right. When would the time have been right, Iris? When I was actually dead? She didn't answer. I looked down at the scholarship fund documents. $7.5 million that would send dozens of working-class kids to medical school. Kids who might remember where they came from. Dad, please. I can change. I can do better. Can you? Yes. I swear to you, I can do better. I looked at my daughter, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment I wavered. This was still the little girl who used to fall asleep in my lap while I read her stories. The teenager who called me from college every Sunday. The young woman who hugged me so tight at her medical school graduation that I thought she might crack my ribs. But then I remembered something else. Helen's voice, weak but determined, 3 days before she died. Eddie, promise me something. If Ayers ever forgets where she came from, if she ever starts thinking she's better than the people who love her, you remind her. You remind her that character isn't about what you achieve. It's about how you treat the people who helped you achieve it. I signed the papers. Ayers gasped, like I'd slapped her. Dad, no. It's done, Ayers. Margaret took the documents and placed them back in her portfolio. The Helen Barnes Memorial Scholarship Fund is now officially established. The first scholarships will be awarded next fall. Ayers stared at the closed portfolio like it contained her own death certificate. $7.5 million, she whispered. $7.5 million that will go to young people who understand that success comes with responsibility. Responsibility to remember the people who believed in you when no one else did. Dad, I can't believe you actually did this. I can't believe it took me this long. Iris wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup even more. So what now? We don't talk anymore? You cut me out of your life completely? I looked at my daughter, and despite everything, I still saw the child I'd raised, the brilliant woman I'd helped create, the surgeon who saved lives every day. Iris, I will always love you. You're my daughter, and nothing will ever change that. But our relationship is going to be different from now on. No more pretending I don't exist. No more being ashamed of where you came from. No more taking my love for granted. What does that mean? It means if you want a relationship with me, it has to be on honest terms. You acknowledge who I am and what I've done for you. You treat me with the respect you'd show any other major donor to your research. Ayers laughed bitterly. You want me to treat you like a donor? I want you to treat me like your father. That stopped her cold. I want you to introduce me to your colleagues as the man who raised you. I want you to tell them about the grocery store and how I sold it to pay for your education. I want you to be proud of where you came from instead of ashamed of it. And if I can't do that? I looked at her for a long moment. Then you'll have learned that some choices have permanent consequences. The story spread through Baltimore's medical community like a virus. By the next morning, Iris's colleagues were talking about nothing else. The brilliant neurosurgeon whose anonymous benefactor turned out to be the father she'd been hiding. The working-class man who donated millions while living in an $800 apartment. The daughter who'd been so ashamed of her background that she'd told people her father was dead. I learned about the fallout through Dr. Mitchell, who called me 3 days after the gala. Eddie, I thought you should know the medical community is buzzing about what happened. Good buzzing or bad buzzing? Mixed. Some people are applauding your generosity. Others are questioning Iris's character. That afternoon, the Baltimore Sun ran a story. Local surgeon's secret benefactor revealed to be her father. The article was respectful but included quotes from unnamed colleagues expressing concerns about Dr. Barnes Richardson's judgment and integrity. The Baltimore Magazine feature that Ayers had been so excited about was postponed indefinitely. More damaging was the social media response. Someone had recorded my speech at the gala and posted it online. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed 2 million times. The comments were brutal. Imagine being so ashamed of your father that you tell people he's dead. This doctor saves children's lives, but can't show basic respect to the man who made her career possible. $7.5 million. That's what integrity costs. But the professional consequences were more serious than social media criticism. Dr. Shani Walsh, chief of neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins, called Ayers into her office on Friday afternoon. I know this because Ayers called me afterward, crying. Dad, Dr. Walsh is questioning my fitness for leadership positions. What kind of leadership positions? I was being considered for department head next year. That's off the table now. I felt a pang of regret. I'd never intended to damage Iris's career, only to teach her a lesson about respect and gratitude. I'm sorry to hear that, Iris. Are you? Because it feels like you wanted to destroy my life. I wanted to save your soul. The following week brought more consequences. The pharmaceutical company that had been sponsoring Iris's research pulled their funding, citing concerns about the program's leadership. 2 speaking engagements were canceled. A medical journal asked her to withdraw a paper she'd submitted for publication. But the most painful consequence came from Iris's personal life. Her husband Richard called me on a Tuesday evening. Mr. Barnes? This is Richard Richardson, Iris's husband. Hello, Richard. I wanted to talk to you about what happened at the gala. I waited, unsure where this conversation was heading. Iris told me what she said to you, about not expecting a birthday party, about being embarrassed by you. She did? Mr. Barnes, I need you to know that I had no idea she felt that way. If I had known she was treating you like that, I would have stopped it. That surprised me. Richard had always seemed to support Iris's social climbing. I appreciate you saying that. I've been married to Iris for 8 years, and I thought I knew who she was. But what she did to you, that's not the woman I fell in love with. Richard, I don't want to come between you and Iris. You're not coming between us. Her choices are coming between us. But 3 days later, Iris called to tell me that Richard had moved out. He said he can't be married to someone who would treat their father the way I treated you. Iris, I'm sorry. Are you? Because my life is falling apart, and it's all because of what you did at that gala. What I did was tell the truth. Your truth destroyed my marriage. No, Iris, your choices destroyed your marriage. I just made them public. But even as I said it, I wondered if I'd gone too far. I'd wanted to teach my daughter a lesson about respect and gratitude. I hadn't intended to wreck her life. That weekend, I drove to Iris's house in Roland Park, the same house she'd been so proud of, with its $12,000 monthly mortgage payment. She answered the door in sweatpants and a Johns Hopkins t-shirt, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Dad, what are you doing here? I wanted to see how you're doing. She laughed bitterly. How do you think I'm doing? I looked around her living room, 4,000 square feet of empty space, no Richard, no sounds of family life, just Iris, alone with the consequences of her choices. I think you're learning something important. What's that? That success without character is just an expensive way to be miserable. Iris sat down on her leather sofa, the one that probably cost more than I made in 6 months at the grocery store. Dad, I've lost everything. My husband, my reputation, my career prospects, all because I hurt your feelings about a birthday party. It wasn't about the birthday party, Iris. Then what was it about? I sat down across from her, in a chair that was probably worth more than my car. It was about respect. It was about remembering who you are and where you came from. It was about honoring the people who sacrificed for you. I honored you. I became a doctor. I saved lives. You honored my investment in your education. You didn't honor me. Iris was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was small. I don't know how to fix this. That depends on what you want to fix. I want my life back. Which life? The one where you pretend I don't exist? Where you're ashamed of your background? Where you value appearances over relationships? The life where I'm successful and respected. Iris, you can still be successful and respected, but it has to be based on who you really are, not on some fake persona you created. And if people judge me for coming from a working class background, then those aren't people worth knowing. Iris looked around her empty house. It's easy for you to say that, Dad. You don't have to work in this world. You don't understand the pressure. You're right. I don't understand the pressure to deny your own father. I don't understand the pressure to be ashamed of people who love you. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Iris spoke. What would Mom think of all this? That question hit me harder than anything else she could have asked. Your mother would think that I did what needed to be done, and she'd think that you have a choice to make about what kind of person you want to be going forward. What choice? Whether you want to be the daughter she raised or the stranger you've become. 2 months after the gala, I got a call I wasn't expecting. Dad, it's Iris. Hello, sweetheart. Can we meet for coffee? I have something I want to show you. We met at a small cafe in Federal Hill, halfway between my apartment and her house. Iris looked different, tired but somehow more genuine than she had in years. Her makeup was minimal, her clothes simple but elegant. She slid a newspaper across the table. The Baltimore Sun. The headline read, Johns Hopkins doctor establishes program for working-class medical students. I read the article with growing surprise. Iris had used her own money, her savings, her investment accounts, everything she could liquidate, to create a mentorship program for first-generation college students pursuing careers in medicine. $1.2 million, she said quietly. Everything I had in my own accounts. Iris, why? Because I finally understood what you were trying to teach me. She pulled out her phone and showed me a video. It was her, speaking at a medical conference, but not the polished, artificial version of herself I'd been seeing for years. My name is Dr. Ayers Barnes Richardson, and I want to tell you about my father. His name is Edward Barnes, and he sold his family's grocery store to pay for my medical education. For years, I was ashamed of that story. I thought it made me look small, unsophisticated, unworthy of respect in academic medicine. In the video, Iris paused, her voice catching slightly. I was wrong. That story is my strength. It's proof that in America, a shopkeeper's daughter can become a brain surgeon if someone believes in her enough to sacrifice everything. My father didn't just pay for my education. He taught me that love is measured by what you're willing to give up, not what you're willing to show off. I looked up from the phone and Iris was watching my face carefully. You posted this online? It's been viewed 800,000 times. I've gotten job offers from 3 different hospitals and interview requests from 6 medical journals. And I've learned that authenticity is a lot more attractive than artifice. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Iris reached across the table and took my hand. Dad, I owe you an apology. Not just for the birthday party comment, but for years of treating you like a secret I was ashamed of. Thank you for saying that. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you respect, recognition, gratitude. She pulled out a folder and handed it to me. Inside were architectural plans. What's this? Plans for the Edward and Helen Barnes Center for Pediatric Brain Cancer Research. A new wing at Johns Hopkins, funded by private donations I've been soliciting. Your story, our story, has inspired people to give. We've raised $4.8 million so far. I stared at the plans, seeing my name and Helen's name together on a building that would save children's lives. Ayers, this is incredible. The center will open next year. And Dad, I want you to be there for the ribbon cutting, not as a secret donor, but as my father. The man who made everything possible. I felt tears starting to form. I'd be honored. There's something else. Ayers pulled out another document. It was a deed. I sold the house in Roland Park. Richard was right to leave me. I wasn't the person he married, and I wasn't the person you raised. I bought a smaller place in Canton, 3 blocks from where you live. Ayers, you didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I want to be closer to you. I want to rebuild our relationship. And I want to remember every day where I came from. She handed me a key, the front door key. I want you to feel welcome anytime. No more appointments, no more feeling like you have to call first. I took the key, turning it over in my hand. Such a small thing, but it represented something huge. A daughter who was finally ready to let her father back into her life. What about your career? Your reputation? My reputation is better than it's ever been. Turns out people respect honesty more than pretense. Who knew? Ayers smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked completely genuine. I got a call from Dr. Walsh yesterday. The department head position is back on the table. Apparently, authenticity is a leadership quality they value. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. The scholarship fund, the $7.5 million. Do you ever regret it? I thought about that question. $7.5 million that could have secured Irese's future, bought her security, given her financial freedom. Instead, it was sending working-class kids to medical school, kids who would remember where they came from. No, I said. I don't regret it. That money is doing exactly what it should do.